How can I review The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2, directed by Francis Lawrence. The continuation of the grand finale centered on Katniss Everdeen and her alliance with past Hunger Game victors and rebels as they maneuver through treacherous obstacles in a dystopian Panem to get to its capital and snuff out President Snow for the genocide he's responsible for. So here are my thoughts on the Hunger Games series. The first one I thought was good, not great. The second one, however, I did think was great. It was one of my favorite films of that year. I absolutely loved it. And then you have the third one, which I think is kind of bad. I just did get around to seeing it this past summer, and I was incredibly disappointed in it, and I'll be honest, I kind of even hate it. To me, the movie was nothing but a whole lot of Jennifer Lawrence's sulking, sobbing, her getting pissed at President Snow, her being worried over Peeta, crying about Peeta, where's Peeta, oh my god, they got Peeta, look what they done to Peeta. That shit right there got on my nerves. It really did. And this is just my opinion, but it even seemed as if Jennifer Lawrence wasn't all too into the film either. And looking at part 1, I really do feel as if it could have been easily the first 30 minutes to the first 45 minutes to this film. Just make the third part really long. But of course, they're not going to do that now, will they? They won't sell as many tickets. However, if there is anything that I will give points to the film for, and that is the infiltration scene towards the end of the film, I thought that was very well directed. But now we have Mockingjay Part 2, and after being so incredibly, sorely disappointed with the first one, I went into this film quite cautiously. And I'm happy to say that this film delivers on everything a film of this sort should. We are now back to form, thankfully. And you want to know what separates Part 2 from Part 1? 4 words. Shit is actually happening. Things are actually happening in this movie. There is a sense of urgency that Part 1 completely lacked. The characters are not just sitting in an underground bunker with poor characterization going on, waiting for things to happen. No, they're actually doing things. They're on the move because they are at war, whether it be the people of Panem, the people who serve President Snow, or the environment, which I have to say is quite thrilling to watch. In the film, there are these booby traps that were set up by President Snow, and they are called pods. And when you come across one, they will obliterate you. It's a very bad way to go, which makes for some pretty on the edge of your seat moments. And that's one thing that I really have to commend this film for, because there were a handful of moments in the film where I really was uncertain if or how these characters were going to get out of certain situations. And for the most part, the film really does do a really good job at delivering on that, outside of maybe one scene towards the end of the film. Now, there is one problem that I have regarding a set piece in the film, and that is the sequence with Katniss and her crew fighting off the mutts in the sewers. And I think the sequence is great. It's one of my favorites in the film, in fact. However, the problem that I have with the sequence is that it's filmed too closely and it's edited too quickly. So it's kind of hard to take in everything because, well, you just can't really see it all too well. But outside of that, I think the scene did what it needed to do, and I think the build-up towards it was quite suspenseful. Now, one complaint that I have heard regarding this film is that this film lacks characterization with its characters, and I would definitely agree with that. This film is by no means a character study, nor does it offer anything new about these characters that we don't already know. But the reason why there's no devotion to that in this film is because there's really no time to provide it in this film, because again, the characters are always on the move. Things are always happening that are much bigger than them. I really do think that's what Part 1 was trying to serve, but it kind of failed at doing so. However, the reason why I found myself caring for the characters in this film was mostly because of Catching Fire. That film did a really good job at establishing characters, those relationships, making me care for those characters, even the minor ones. And even if it were not for Catching Fire, there are situations that these characters are put in that had me invested. Maybe not the same sense of caring, but in a sense that made me interested. And then you have the reason for why these people are rising up against Snow, so it's a combination of all three of these that makes me want to root for these characters. One thing that I do want to talk about is the relationship between Katniss and Peeta, and I've never been a big fan of it outside of maybe Catching Fire. I've always thought it to be melodramatic and pretty cheesy. It's really no different here, but it's nowhere near as cringeworthy as it was in Part 1. Here, it's just kind of cheesy. And as far as the love triangle goes, with Katniss, Gale, and Peeta, that's pretty much non-existent. So that's also great. As far as performances go, they're all incredibly solid. But as for any standouts, one would be Jen Malone's, who's hardly in the film, but the screen time that she does get, I thought she was great. I really liked her character. And I have to say, she's one of those actresses that I really think needs to be more exposed, because I really do. I think she's great. To me, she was actually one of the bright spots in Inherent Vice, which film's kind of rough in my opinion. And then of course you have Jennifer Lawrence, and I think here she's pretty good. Not great, not her best performance, because she has given some extraordinary performances, in my opinion, Silver Linings Playbook being one of those, but she's pretty good in this film, though there is this one scene that I do think is quite magnificent. There's this one scene in the film where she just breaks down, and I have to say, I was quite moved by it. I really was. My only complaint regarding that scene is that it's a little too short-lived, and the way it's edited into the film, I thought was just a little awkward. But aside from that, I think it's a pretty extraordinary scene in terms of acting. As for her character Katniss, I've always liked her outside of Mockingjay Part 1, and what I like about her is that she's a character who is far, far more complex than a character such as Bella from Twilight. For those young girls out there who read those books and watch these movies, I think she's a great character for them to sink their teeth into, because she's not a character who justifies her existence by getting with a man. She's more superior than that, and hopefully this trend will continue on. Overall, what's always set the Hunger Games apart from a lot of these young adult type movies is the maturity that these films have, and the intricacies that these films have. These are not just mere pieces of entertainment, but they actually do offer something thought-provoking, at least for what they are. So I'm going to give the Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2 a light 4 out of 5. Mockingjay Part 2 might not be as fun or as intelligent as something in the likes as Catching Fire. In fact, I would even say that Mockingjay Part 2 is probably the most grim in the entire series. But at the same time, this is still a great finale to a pretty good series. If you're somebody who has seen Mockingjay Part 2, then do let me know your thoughts on it, and do let me know what your thoughts are on the Hunger Games. Are you a fan of the series? Are you not? Let me know. As always, I'm Colin Kirkland, and thank you so much for watching.